Hey, family, you ever find it difficult to spend time with God? Like, have difficulty getting yourself to spend time in prayer or meditate or to study? You have situations where your thoughts are just clouded with the things that you need to tend to in your day or the things going on in your life, and you feel like you'd like to spend some time spiritually focused, like to spend some time with God, but it just doesn't seem like you have time to, or it seems like there are a lot of things going on. Let's get into it. I'm Royce Fletcher Thomason, and as always, I'm sending a bunch of peace and love your way for this Sunday hope and healing session. We're going to do a little bit of talking, and we're also going to we'll get into perhaps some healing, depending on how the vibe is going for the session. Peace to you, Jennifer Bliss. Good to see you in the space as always. Um, and so we'll get into a little bit about why this happens. Why is this a challenge? I'm outside walking, and the trail that I would normally be on, it's not actually paved right now. So forgive me if I get distracted. But anyway, so I noticed that I've talked with people who've had this challenge uh, where it can just be difficult to really sometimes stay as spiritually grounded as you'd like to. Just there may be things going on in life. You may have some financial concerns. You may just be busy with work or with children or just life in general. And you may have a feeling like you aren't really spending the kind of quality time focusing on spiritual matters that you would like to. Maybe I know that we've got a couple of transcending the matrix initiates in the space today. You may feel like you have situations where you just don't feel like doing the inner work, whether that inner work is in the form of you know t- taking the time to do whatever you do in your spiritual practices, maybe even in terms of utilizing transcending the matrix, which is actually a powerful tool that we have to actually put into practice to help in the transformation of our lives and help other people transform their lives. It gets real easy sometimes, and I'm talking about this because I know this is a real thing that people deal with. I've dealt with it, and I know that other people certainly deal with it. It can be very easy. Greetings, Terry Johnson. It can be very easy sometimes to just kind of get caught up in stuff, right? Caught up in what we call life, which is actually really the stuff that we get caught up in is really the stuff that's distracting us from life, if we're going to just be real about it. And so, like, how do we deal with that? Like, what kind of response can we have to that, and why do we face that in the first place? Well, I'll tell you, a reason that we face it in the first place is because at our core, the essence of who we really are is the pure love and the divine light that was birthed out of God, right? We're made of the same stuff that God is made of. That's our essence. And so the essence of who we are is the love and the joy and the bliss and the spirit. Oh, this is the first time I've actually seen this. I'm actually looking at an alligator in the water. Uh, I don't know if you can see it in the distance. Yes, I'm getting distracted actually. Um, but a thing that we sometimes face is in this process of dwelling in a physical body, living in a physical body. we sometimes forget who we are at our essence, that our essence is pure love and divine light. I say that a lot. Our essence is pure love and divine light. Our essence, at our core, who we really are, is a drop of water from the ocean of God, right? As I'm walking by the water right now. At our core, who and what we are is a drop of water from the ocean of God. And in these earth suits, this physical stuff, it's easy for us to get caught up in it, because while we are spiritual beings and while we are mental and emotional beings, there's definitely a physical aspect of us too, and it's the densest aspect of our beingness, right? And so it's easy for us to focus on it the most. If you feel if your body feels hungry, you recognize that appetite. If your body feels pain, it's easy for you to recognize that readily. It's much more difficult to ignore that. But a reality is that when we're ignoring our spirit, which we do, when we're ignoring our spirit, there's a pain that begins to set in then too. And the pain that we end up experiencing ends up becoming the stuff of our lives that gives us heartache and problems and difficulties and challenges. There's just dawned on me something that the late Wayne Dyer said, that there's a spiritual solution to every problem. And that's true. There is a spiritual solution to every problem, because at its root, every problem that we have is a calling for us to reconnect with spirit, all right? Every problem that we have, whether that's a pain that we feel in our body, a growth that might be taking place in our body, some form of mental distress or emotional distress, anxiety, depression, all of these things are really calls from, is God calling out to us to come back home to who it is that we really are, because on some level we've forgotten that. And so the reason that this happens is, while our essence is God, there's also an enemy of our soul, so to speak, right? A lot of times people think of this enemy as something outside of ourselves. We end up having problems even with people, and sometimes feel like it's an attack of the enemy. It is, by the way. But the enemy oftentimes isn't what we think it is. It isn't the person on our job that's giving us problems. It isn't the person that we're in a relationship with that we're not seeing eye to eye with. It isn't our parent or offspring. It isn't our sibling or somebody that we just can't get along with and have difficulty in our interactions with. It's not that. It's always something quite a bit different. It's always something quite a bit different. And so, at essence, what it is that's going on is we have entered into a susceptible state where we have allowed ourselves to forget who we are, and in those moments of forgetting who we are at our essence, based on different things that we've had in our life experiences, traumas that have not been properly processed, pain that's not been adequately resolved, uncried tears that have not been released, right? Even things that have taken place before you entered into this life, things that your ancestors may have endured, that's been passed down from one generation to another through the DNA, right? Some refer to that as generational curses. That is the thing. But another thing is that, we, when 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 we we can only experience the hardships in our life if we allow it. Now this is a difficult thing to say because I know that we go through different stuff, and I know I'm treading a thin line here, because I'm not wanting to say that the things that we endure and the things that we face, the problems that we have, the difficulties that we encounter, I'm not saying that those are always our fault. That's not what I'm saying, and I certainly don't want to give that impression. What I am saying, though, is that there is certain stuff that's going on the outside that we don't let in. You know, if somebody, most reasonable people, if somebody was, if there was a 2-year-old that said the sky was green, well, you can look up in the sky and you know that the sky is not green, it's blue. And you might correct that 2-year-old to say, you know, that no, that it's not green, it's blue. That's blue. And you might even show them what green is, what green looks like, or an example of green. You might show them other examples of blue. But you're probably not going to get all bent out of shape because they think the sky is green, because you already know that that's not true, right? You already know that that's not true. However, there are things that we experience sometimes. There are things that come into our path where things are presented to us, things are said to us and about us that aren't true, but we don't know that they're not true, and we buy into it, we take it in. There are things that are said to us or things that are done to us where we kind of internalize. There are things that people might do or things that people might not do. May have been even your own parents. Maybe weren't able to give you something that it was that you needed when you were growing up as a child. Okay. And it wasn't any fault of your own, but you might have taken that to mean that you weren't worthy of something, that you didn't deserve what it was that you needed, that you didn't deserve to have your needs met, or that you weren't worthy of that. You might have gotten that kind of religious indoctrination about not being worthy. Greetings, Kimberly Taylor. Good to see you in the space. You might have gotten that, that teaching, and gotten a sense of being unworthy of blessings. I've mentioned before about a situation where I was talking with a lady. This was years ago, and she had been going through a difficult time in her life. And one night she had a dream, and what her experience was in this dream, it was that Jesus came to her. And in the process, she felt a great peace with it. And she went and she actually shared the experience with her pastor, and their pastor told her, no, that wasn't Jesus, that was the devil. And so, I don't know if it was that particular pastor's jealousy, or that he hadn't had that kind of experience, or his just lack of understanding regarding the situation, but that was actually damaging to her that he told her that. And because of the position of authority, if you will, deeming him to be a person of spiritual authority, she discounted the experience that she had and the thing that actually brought her peace of experiencing Yeshua, experiencing Jesus come to her in a time of difficulty, and her having peace as a result of that. What it actually did was it flipped it upside down and made that a negative experience for her, unfortunately. Right? And so I also know of another person who, at a time of having some challenges, in this particular case, some health challenges, they had experienced some miraculous things in their lifetime, but then they got to a point where, they felt like, well, maybe my miracles have run out. Maybe I just don't get any more miracles. And that, here's the thing about miracles, by the way. Miracles don't happen for people who need them. They happen for people who are in alignment with them, right? They happen for people who make room for them in their lives. They happen for people who are in a receptive state to the experience of them. And maybe not always even consciously, maybe even subconsciously, right? And so remember, our bigger context is dealing with having challenges and finding it difficult to really spend time with God. I could also say find it difficult to spend time with your own inner self. There's no place that God would rather meet you than in your own heart, right? And so, greetings, Joy, and whoever the Facebook user is must be tuned in from the Transcending the Matrix group. But what ends up happening, folks, is we end up getting caught up. Oftentimes we do. We end up getting caught up and we get distracted. And sometimes we might even engage in behaviors that we might not feel so good about. We might go back to some old ways sometimes, maybe. We might have some situations where we make some mistakes, where we do something that we don't feel so good about ourselves concerning, that we might feel a little shameful about. And then what happens is that we actually turn away from God in those situations. We hear a voice speaking in our head saying, "You're bad," or "You are no good. You know, there's something wrong with you." We hear this voice speaking, maybe literally, but in all likelihood, figuratively, that's discouraging us from actually going to God, when in reality, that's when we most need to. And so sometimes we have situations where we're dealing with some stuff, we're dealing with some challenges, we're dealing with some hardship in our lives. And those things, remember, those things are coming specifically as a messenger to tell us that we need to turn to God. And then what ends up happening is that, unfortunately, a lot of times we end up turning away from God, or we run from God, or we avoid dealing with what it is that we really need to deal with. And then we try to handle things in our own intellect, which, as smart as you might be, that's not often going to do the job, because the intellect makes a wonderful servant, but a horrible master, right? Okay. And so, you know, in the Transcending the Matrix class, talk about a cell, talk about the pineal gland a little bit. The pineal gland is basically in the center of the brain, and talk about a cell within the pineal gland, referring to it as the master cell, because it essentially gives commands or gives orders, or delegates responsibility to all of the other cells of the body. That's all our physical bodies are, is a collection of different cells. And those cells form together to make organs. They form together to make systems of the body. They form together, in different ways. And they all have their own various functions and responsibilities. But the entirety of our body, save for the toxins that exist within them from things that we've taken in, the entirety of our body is actually just cells, each with their own job. And so the master cell in the pineal gland gives instructions to all of the other cells of the body, with the intent and purpose for each of the cells in the body to serve the greater good. Now, down at the base of the spine, within the coccyx is the tailbone. Within the coccyx, there's another cell. The first cell that you were when that sperm cell fertilized that egg cell, right? And from that cell came all of the other cells stemmed from that cell, right? Coming up through your spinal column, going out through, the various limbs and the organs of your body. All of those cells throughout the body, right, started with this one initial cell we refer to as the creator cell, because all of the other cells were created from that one cell. All of the other cells in your body were created from that one initial cell. And so we've got in the brain, in the center of the brain, within the pineal gland and the base of the spine and the coccyx, there's this communication that's always going on. And things work out right when all of the cells in our body essentially are receiving the instructions from the master, right? Receiving the instructions from the master and lining up with that for the greater good of the whole. However, it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes there's some resistance that we have to that on some level. There's some break in the communication, and the way that it actually manifests is us having some form of resistance to what it is that the different cells are being guided to support the greater good of the totality of our beingness, right? While we're dwelling in these physical bodies. Okay, and so here we go. We have situations like think of us as human beings as all being like cells in the body of God, or us as human beings living on the earth is all different cells in the, in this greater life form of planet Earth, right? I talk sometimes about us being a drop of water in the ocean of God. We're all a piece of a greater whole, a much greater whole. And the idea is that each individual part is actually working in alignment of the greater good of the whole. Okay? But sometimes there's a break in the communication, there's resistance. Sometimes some cells go rogue, which is exactly what cancer is, right? It's a parasitic cells. They're cells that block off communication from the master cell. They block off communication from the master cell and they do their own thing. They say, why serve in heaven if you can rule in hell, right? That's the kind of the mentality. And so they kind of try to break off, do their own thing. And not only that, then they try to get other cells to join them, right? To break away from the divine plan, from the higher plan as well, right? And so this causes problems within the body. Eventually, the cells, those cancer cells end up infecting other cells, and they join the fight against the body, right? Against the greater good of the body, and perhaps even end up metastasizing and showing up in other parts of the body. And the reality is that, cancer, like any other parasite, it needs a host to survive. But its survival is dependent upon the host, although it's simultaneously killing the host. And so in its rogue nature, it's actually engaged in a kamikaze mission. It's actually setting up its own self for failure, its own self for defeat, its own self for setting up its own self for its own death, right? Now, this is what we do a lot of times without actually even consciously realizing it. And the way that it ends up manifesting in our lives is we end up getting away from the things that actually most nurture and most feed us. The reason that we do that is because of the other stuff that we've taken in that we've not properly dealt with, the areas in our life where we're still needing some healing, the areas in our life where we've bought into some false messaging that perhaps came from somewhere outside of ourselves, but that we somehow took in. It could be things that, again, that could have been very personal to us, or it could have been things that are just kind of collectively believed amongst humanity, right? There's certain things that we kind of collectively agree to. We kind of collectively agree to and believe that after accumulating so many years on the planet, the body starts falling apart and you have to start feeling all of these aches and pains and stuff. You talk to people in blue areas, and that's not necessarily the case. I've not that I know personally, but I've known of people who've lived a very, very, very long time without degeneration of their body because they were tuned in a way that was in alignment with God's divine plan. And the reality is that we often are tuned in to the way of the world instead. We might have times where we're tuned in to God's divine plan, but we also have times, no doubt about it, where we're tuned into the ways of the world and all of the dis-ease and all of the problems that come from that, right? And so something that I want to say is a challenge I'd like to share, because this is something that I had to experience myself in order to be able to share this with you. Keep having to change direction based on the flow of the wind so that you all aren't hearing a lot of wind. And so a challenge that I want to share is those times where you feel least inclined to focus spiritually, the times you feel least inclined to pray, the times you feel least inclined to meditate, the times you feel least inclined to do a transcending the matrix treatment on yourself for an issue that you got going on, the times you feel least inclined to study, to get into the scriptures, to engage in whatever your spiritual practices might be. The times when you feel least inclined to do those things, do them then. Choose consciously to do it, recognizing that it's an enemy at work against you, trying to keep you away from your blessing. It's an enemy working against you, trying to keep you from your blessing. And unfortunately, that enemy often manifests as unhealed parts of ourselves, right? As unhealed parts of ourselves. I'm not saying that you need to destroy an unhealed part of yourself. Rather than simply destroying an enemy, it's better to turn that enemy into a friend, right? And so those unhealed parts of yourself, the part of yourself that had experienced, abuse, the part of yourself that experienced heartbreak, the part of yourself that experienced being cheated or being cheated on, the part of yourself that experienced, that may have even experienced yourself making gains in life by getting over on other people in some kind of way, right? The parts of yourself that speaks negatively about yourself or even about other people, right? It's better to transform that part of your being, that part of your consciousness, that part of you, and reconcile it back. Reconcile that part of you back to God, if you will. Reconcile that part of you back to the truth. Reconcile that part of you back to love, right? You are absolutely worthy of love. Your existence tells me so. The fact that you are alive means that you're worthy of love, because you are made in the image and likeness of God, which is to say that you are made in the image and likeness of divine perfection itself, right? Now, you might not always show up as a divine perfection. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go out on the limb and say that you don't. As a general rule, you don't show up in the earth as divine perfection. It might be a rare occasion when you may, but that doesn't change who it is that you are at your core. It really doesn't. And no matter what you've been through, no matter who did you wrong in life, including if that person was you, because the reality is, yeah, there may be some other people who did us wrong, but if we really get down to it, we allowed ourselves to be in a position for that to happen. There were certain things, that indications that we could have, taken heed to and avoided. Certain people who may have not had our best intentions at heart and maybe just wanted to take advantage of us somehow. People who, in their own greed or in their own selfishness or in their own narcissistic ways, may have just seen us as a means to an end and discounted how that would end up impacting us in some way. But the reality is this, folks. We've all had some folks who've done us wrong. And if we're to be truthful with ourselves, we've all done some other people wrong, even if we didn't intend to. And one of the people that we've done wrong, and one of the people who's done us wrong, is the same person. And the person I'm talking about right now is ourselves, right? But that doesn't mean that there isn't redemption available, because it absolutely is. I wear this necklace, and it has a scripture that deals with love. Not just any old love, not talking about like an erotic love or a romantic love, not even talking about a love amongst friends, like a brotherly or sisterly love. Not talking even about what parents often say is unconditional love for their children. Talking about something much purer than that. And that is what's actually unconditional love, not pretending to be unconditional love. And that's God's love for you and for me, right? The times where we are feeling most ashamed, the times where we're feeling the most unworthy, the times we're feeling the most disconnected, are the times where God most wants to draw us in and give us a big hug. The time where God is most wanting to commune with us. We think that it's the opposite because of the voices that we're hearing in our heads that are saying that we're unworthy. You know, we do something wrong and then we think that we need to be punished for it. There's a scripture that essentially says that that's not of God. Those who think that you need to be punished is because you're really not quite properly understanding this love that I'm talking about. This love that is completely filled with grace, right? And so I want to encourage us to make room for that. I want to encourage us to make room for God's pure unconditional love. And I want us to also make room for that kind of self-love as well, where in spite of mistakes that you've made, that you're still going to love you. In spite of things that other people did to you that may have even been cruel, might have even been sadistic, that maybe made you feel like damaged goods somehow. In spite of that, still choose to love you. No matter what you might have done to other people or what harm you might have caused yourself, and decisions that you might have made, even decisions where you knew better. You didn't want to own it at the time, but when it came down to it, you know that you knew better. I want you to allow yourself to make room for and receive from God and from yourself a love that's not based on you always getting it right. Always aim to do right. Always aim to do right. But the reality is that you're gonna have some missteps along the way. You're gonna fall short at some point. You know, don't go into something intending to do something that you know isn't right. But when you do, allow yourself to experience the grace to receive the love. And a key way that we receive the love is by tapping into the source of love, right? Tapping into the source of love. Now, a lot of times, like I said, I get to be blessed to participate in people's lives as a vessel of healing, and uh, and through this methodology referred to as transcending the matrix, right? It's a blessing and an honor and a privilege to be able to do that, and it's a way that I get to, and that other people who are, you know, practitioners of this work get to participate with God. Get to participate with God. The reality is, God, if God doesn't show up, there's no healing happening. But it's a beautiful way where we're extended the grace to participate with God. For you all who are students of this work, I want to encourage you, whatever challenges that you might be dealing with in life, to take the time to do some work on yourself in that area. I did self-healing work to develop transcending the matrix and to be able to teach it, right? Not just for pain or sickness or disease, but certainly that too. Love yourself enough to reach out to other people who are practitioners of the work. If you feel like it's hard for you to stay out of your own way and get that support, that's why we do the support sessions. But you don't even have to wait once a month or so for a support session. You know, reach out to somebody, even reach out to me and get that support. That's a way that you can make room for you to receive that love. For those of you who aren't, I mean, transcending the matrix is a wonderful way for you to be able to love on yourself. You know, you can do self-healing to be able to release past trauma, to be able to release cycles or patterns in your life that aren't really necessarily healthy, that don't serve you well, right? And so I want to say, for everybody out there, you know, without a question, whatever it is that you've been through in your life, you're worthy of love. And God loves you, and I love you. And I want to encourage you to love on you. Now, we've got this opportunity that's coming up next month, September 29th through October 1st, for Transcending the Matrix training. It's a beautiful opportunity. Whether you choose to, to make this opportunity available to you or not, I want you to love on yourself. I'm just saying this is a way that you can do that. This is a way that you can do that. The wind seems to keep blowing from behind me, so I keep needing to walk forward. Maybe there's a whole message in that. Class coming up September 29th through October 31st. About 5 weeks from now, right? I encourage you to give yourself that blessing, if you would. We've actually got a special going on this weekend for anybody who's interested. So reach out to me either on Facebook or Instagram at Royce Fletcher Thomason, or you can reach out on Instagram at Transcending the Matrix. Or even, now it won't do it if you are commenting in the YouTube thread, the YouTube live thread, because I don't see those. Those don't show up after the broadcast is over. But if you then go back and leave a comment in this video after the live broadcast is stopped. It'll show up in the main comments. Um, just to express your interest that way, and we can find a way to communicate more directly. Anyway, Curly Conscious King, I woke, whoever that might be, whoever the Facebook user is, Kimberly Taylor, Joy, Curly Conscious King, Terry, Jennifer, and everybody else who's been tuned in today. Well, it sure is beautiful being out here in nature. There's a huge bird that just flew over my head. I'm sending a bunch of peace and love your way. There we are. It's a little bit different when I'm broadcasting from the phone. The screen isn't as wide. But I pray God most bountiful and abundant blessings upon you. May joy radiate in your soul. May love smile in your heart. May health permeate every cell of your body. And may goodness follow you all the days of your life. Catch you next time.